Welcome to Man 360. I'm your host, Brian. Today I'm in Fort Myers, Florida at our station here, and I want to thank Paul Lodato and his team for helping us out. We have some great things in store for you today. When we were at the National Religious Broadcasters meeting earlier this year, I sat down with musical artist Erskin Anavitarte to talk about his music and musical influences, as well as his passion for orphaned, abandoned, and vulnerable children. For our outdoor segment, the executive producer of the program, Yolanda, and I try out a few different types of freeze-dried food brands. She's never tasted this type of hiking food before, so it should be fun. We'll wrap up the program with the travel segment, talking to our friend of the program, Malone of Giddings Tactical, sharing about this past year traveling around the country and living full-time in his RV. We had a great conversation about the things he learned and the dynamic of being on the road full-time with his family. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Welcome to Man 360. I enjoyed my time with Erskin. It was fun getting to know him and learn that he is much more than just a musical artist. He shared about his transition into music and how it was just a hobby growing up, but God kept opening the door for him to do music. When he learned an interesting fact about a family member later in his life, his transition into music made perfect sense. He also shared about his heart for adoption as well as foster care, which is amazing and needed in our culture today. Here's my interview with musician and cultural influencer, Erskin Anavitarte. Erskin, thank you for being on Man 360.
Thank you so much for having me. It's crazy here.
I know.
We get a chance to hang out.
Yeah, I know. National Religious Broadcasters Convention here. And I just wanted to ask you and just talk to you a little bit about maybe some of the musical influences in your life coming up in music and, those different things. Just
Sure. Yeah, being a child of the 80s, 90s,
yes.
Kind of growing up with this sort of kind of tumultuous time period of music. We've got, the older influences that are there, like the Marvin Gayes and all, the Temptations, all those different things, kind of gives way to the 80s and just sort of like the MTV generation. And so you've got everything from Billy Joel to Michael Jackson to, you get into the 90s, you got Boyz II Men, you've got a lot of the groups that are coming out. Rap begins to be a little bit more prominent in the scene. And so if you can imagine this, I write pop, country, hip hop, R&B, ballad, soul, children's music, and now EDM.
You do EDM too?
Just do EDM.
Wow, that's one of my favorite genres.
It's on my latest album.
That's so great. Wow. So from that, from those influences, and obviously those people are, a lot of them I feel like are writing music out of what they've gone through or what they've been through or their experiences. Talk a little about your faith journey and how you integrate maybe your message that you want to share that you feel is important into your music.
Yeah, so like you were talking about, a lot of people write from the level of experience that they have, and I think for me that's pretty much the same story, but I come at it from a different vantage point, because when I originally started doing music, it was more of just a hobby that I was doing. I would write songs from sort of an emotional overflow or a situation in life, maybe telling a story. I really wanted to be a speaker, and I really wanted to be a teacher, and I really wanted to go and do other things like overseas. And people kept asking me to come back and refer to the music. And so after a while, I finally had to surrender to say, God, this is obviously what you want me to do.
Which is very manly, by the way, right?
I'm going to have to submit here.
Yes.
I want to go do this, but the Lord keeps opening all these doors. And most people would say, you have all these opportunities in music. You should be excited about that. But I was not really all that excited about the possibility of doing music. And in fact, somebody asked me one time, they said, so are you going to start doing music as a career? And I thought, that's the dumbest idea I think I've ever heard. Like, who just goes and does music as a career?
Right.
And obviously there are people who do that. Obviously that's what I do now.
Right.
And so, the Lord definitely used just a commitment in faith and my walk with Him to recognize that I'm not in control of anything. It is He who began a good work, and it's He who's going to complete that good work.
Right.
And I'm along for the journey, and the best that I do on the journey is submitting to Him, following His instruction. And from that point, it's actually been quite a journey.
That's
adventure.
Awesome. Yeah. So do you feel like from your family maybe too, did they always push you towards the music side of who you are? Or did they just push you hey, be the best you can be, Erskin? And
not at all.
Did they not? Or were they like, you're going to be a starving artist and not make any money or not do anything?
That's probably more the perspective that I got from my family. And so those that.
And God bless Erskin's family if they're watching this right now.
Yeah, you guys are great. This is fantastic. They're supportive now, but it was kind of one of those things where, if I could just kind of open up a little bit and just kind of share a little bit from my background.
Yeah.
My dad and I, we didn't grow up together. Like, my dad's name is Erskin, my name is Erskin, but he lived in Milwaukee. I grew up in Texas. And so we never really knew one another. We saw each other maybe a handful of times growing up. It wasn't until recently when I started traveling and touring that we actually got a chance to really get to know one another a little bit. But I didn't realize that he had been a musician and traveled around. And so that was part of like his story. And so I think my parents were a little bit hesitant. Family was a little bit hesitant to say, oh, he's following in the path of his dad. Now, that wasn't something that we contrived because we weren't around one another.
Right, you didn't like plan it out.
But when they saw me going down that route, they were like, oh, this could be a struggle.
Yeah.
And so I can understand their hesitations as far as that's concerned.
Yeah.
But it really was one of those things where, if you talk about calling, and really something that when you establish what it is that you were created to do and you fall into that, it begins to be something that's like, oh, this is what I was meant to do.
Right. Yeah, so it's more about you, like you say, in your calling sounds like it kind of found you.
It did.
More. It wasn't like, it sounds like you already had ambitions to go a different direction. And I love, this one thing I love about God, especially as men, that God is so gentle with us to help us and recognize who He's created us to be, and how actually helps to realign us when we're listening. And I feel like some of that needs to be openness to, to Him. So I know that you are an advocate specifically for adoption. I think it was the Holt company as well. Can you share a little bit about that? And I know we've done other programs or segments on the program about, don't have abortions, don't encourage your girlfriend or your wife to have, those kind of things. Talk to me about your advocacy, basically.
I'll jump into that, but I almost feel like I want to interview you at this point. But don't you feel like in every man's life, there comes this point in which you sort of have this collision point or this tension point in which you're struggling against that which God has called you to and that which, you would want to do yourself.
Right.
And it's this tension point of struggle. As I read the Bible, especially the Old Testament, and I see people who are reluctant to take on leadership, or people who were too eager to take on leadership.
There's it's always one of the two.
Two sides
That's
of that.
So true.
And it becomes the story where, if men would naturally submit to the Lord, then things would go much better.
Right.
But we don't naturally submit to the Lord.
Right.
And so you see all the things that happen as a result of trying to either get away from God or trying to jump into God's position.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to the aspect that you just talked about, my wife and I, we adopted kids 14 years ago. My kids are somewhere around here walking around trying to get all the free stuff they can.
Yeah, it's the swag.
And so when we started that journey, that was kind of one, I was not from a family that had adopted kids before. And so I'm kind of like, I don't really know. Maybe this is okay, maybe it's not. And it's been tremendous. It's a blessing. It's a struggle. Very much so. But it's one in which I've seen how God has used that adoptive theology in our own lives. We're adopted into the family of God, and specifically in our own life, to be able to bring blessing to so many different people that we would not have otherwise have known. And so as an artist now that goes to stages and plays concerts and everything, I get a chance to advocate for Holt International, and they've been tremendous partners.
Yeah, and that's awesome. We'll provide, we have an additional content section of our website that we can put information about Holt and that kind of thing too.
Great.
But I think it's interesting how you're talking and I'll jump back to your previous comment. I feel like as we recognize and we see the benefits of following God, and we actually can see once we are obedient to Him, how He opens those doors even for you and your wife to be obedient in adoption. And I have another pastor friend in Denver who adopted 2 girls during the pandemic.
Wow.
And they're from Colombia. And he was talking about how he really felt like he gave the gift of family to these girls. It just gives me goosebumps even talking about it, because it's like, you don't realize what you're giving to someone in that adoptive. We just look at it from the receiving the kids, but you're really giving them the gift of family, and the gift of stability, the gift of God, that you and your wife have, and it sounds like in your family. So, again, I prayed to you before we started, but just to continue to pray for you.
Thank you.
And just to believe that God's going to do great things through you and your ministry.
Yeah, we're a foster home, so we
you are? That's great.
So we also just got a 3-month-old and a 22-month-old in the last couple of weeks.
That's awesome. So you need even
more
prayer, is what you're saying. You're like, pray, but then pray.
Diapers, and I'm like, let me remember back how this used to go.
Thank you, God, for reminding me of the call, right?
Exactly.
Erskin, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, sir. Bless you. Today we are in Old Town, Florida at Lucky Charm RV Park.
Yeah.
We're finishing up about a 50-day trip in our travel trailer. And Yolanda and I were talking. She has never tasted freeze-dried food before.
I have never have.
So when I go on hikes, and when I go, either on a long day hike or overnight, I always try to take some type of freeze-dried food. Now, the reason why you do freeze-dried food is the size of it. You can pack it down a lot. You can get a lot into your bag. The weight is great on it as well. It doesn't weigh a whole lot. There's a ton of preservatives in it. That's probably why Yolanda's never tasted it before.
Exactly.
So I talked her into being on the program again and tasting these two brands. So you'll see we have these two brands. One is Mountain House, and the other, I believe, is Alpine Air. So one thing if you've never tasted or actually used these type of packs, you've got to look at the directions on the back. So some of them are going to be a little bit longer or take a longer time to cook. Some of them are going to be multiple versus a single serving as well. So you can have ones, both of these are 2 servings, but you can see this is a much larger bag of food in the Alpine Air versus the Mountain House.
This one was 0.7 ounces, and yours was, what was it, like 4 point?
Yeah, 4.5. So actually this is about 2.5 ounces more.
And this required 2 cups of water, and this one was a cup and a third.
So also when you're hiking as well, you've got to think of, if you're going to be near a water source, then you're fine. You don't have to necessarily worry about how much water you carry in, or when you're boiling water for food. But that also could be a consideration if you're rationing your water for the amount of food that you want to eat. If you have something like this that's going to take 2 full cups versus a cup and a third, you can almost get 2 of these, which are 2 servings, versus this one, as far as the just the use of them.
Yeah, and if you've been hiking a long day and you're like, I need the carbs, like Brian's a big guy, this would probably be good for him, so he can get his carbs and everything in there. A better serving size.
And I'll say this too, this is 2 servings, this is also 2 servings. So if you're thinking about this, if you're hiking with other guys as well, or ladies, you bring your lovely wife on your hike, and maybe you just want to do or bring 1 pack, this would probably be better in the Mountain Air, just purely on usage, right? Now we're going to taste them and let you know exactly how they taste for Yolanda. It's going to be great. So the other thing you need to always watch is Yolanda's face. When she tastes something that she likes or she doesn't like, that's very, very telltale. And you'll see it
hide
today.
it, yes.
She does not hide it. She wears expressions of what she tastes, whether she likes it or not, on her face. So, but again, if you're hiking, you have multiple people, or you're kind of saying, okay, we're going to bring this amount of food, and we want to keep our weight down. Maybe you just want to do the Mountain Air if it tastes good.
Yes.
All right. So I did notice too the difference of this real quick. The size of the noodles. This has a lot thicker noodle, more traditional size noodles. This one had a lot smaller and actually a spiral, I think. So maybe we can let's get a scoop out of it.
Yeah, I'm gonna stir this really good because the cheese seems to be at the bottom.
And this one too, I don't know if you can see this in the camera. Maybe we can open this up with the camera.
Yeah.
This one looked like it was more kind of like wasn't as stringy.
Oh, his looks totally different than mine.
So this one actually is more, you can see this.
Yeah, mine doesn't look that way at all.
So this is the difference of the 2 of those, you can see.
Yeah.
So, okay,
mine has carrots and peas and corn, which...
So actually we got,
I don't know.
We each got the one we opened is more that we'd probably eat. Okay, so let's take a taste here.
Okay.
I want to see Yolanda's taste first. Actually, that's going to be more normal probably.
I want to try to get some vegetables in here too.
Well, so. I mean, it's freeze-dried vegetables.
I know.
So.
Here we go.
Go ahead. Those preservatives going down. Okay, let me taste. We're married, so we're using the same spoon. It's okay.
No COVID here.
I do kiss her. Let me take a taste of this.
You like that?
That's good.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
I mean, it's okay. If I'm in the woods and I need to eat, I'll eat it.
So,
but I will say that the cheese is all clumped on at the bottom, so I don't think it got stirred really well. But it's definitely...
I was the one making these, sorry.
It's definitely not cheesy like that.
Okay, so this one, let's see what the cheesy... Now this has obviously less vegetables and things. This is more just kind of meat and potatoes.
Yeah,
and,
this has vegetables, so that's interesting.
Again, those are more spiral noodles, and it's a larger pack. This is more kind of more traditional. The Mountain House is more traditional mac and cheese. I think I like that better.
Oh, awesome. Oh, wow. Yeah, this is like a soupy kind of mac and cheese.
And also, you'll know, you saw when we were getting our things ready, we are actually using a cup to actually meter it exactly the amount of water you need. When you're out in the woods, you're going to maybe do just kind of eyeball it as far as how much you think you're gonna need to put in there?
Okay, here's what I'm gonna say.
Please, I want to hear your never tasted freeze-dried food.
No.
What is your opinion?
Okay, so I like this one better.
Are you kidding?
No.
Oh, I just showed you. Sorry.
This is more traditional, cheesy, creamy mac and cheese.
You think it's creamy?
Yeah, I do. This is like a gourmet, healthier.
I mean, what's healthier, right?
Right. But I really feel like this is kind of more bougie. And this is just like you're going to sit the kids down and eat mac and cheese.
So do you want to finish this one then?
I will not finish either of these.
So we're sorry. So we have Mountain Air and Mountain House.
And they're not bad. Look, if I was in the woods and we were hiking.
Okay, not emergency though, but we took it up to eat for a lunch up hiking. You would eat one of these.
I would do this one.
So if we go hike and I bring these up and I surprise you and go, honey, I got a surprise. I pulled out what you would eat it? Okay.
Along with an apple that I bring or something.
Okay. So so if you have kids, you and your spouse can eat this. You throw this at the kids. They say they don't like it. Say your taste buds are going to change. You will love it.
They would like this.
They will like this.
Yeah,
so,
that's normal.
Yeah. So again, Yolanda, thank you for being on the program.
It's fun.
I mean, I know you're a part of the program, being executive producer.
I'm in every shoot.
Every single shoot. So yeah, so hopefully this gives you a little bit of information about, again, choosing possibly a brand. If you have some information or if you have used a different brand, maybe of mac and cheese that you like, or even maybe a type specifically. I know there's chili, there's all those kinds. You can go to our Facebook or our Instagram page and just let us know what you like. We'd love to connect with you and hear your thoughts as well. Aaron Malone and I have been friends for over 20 years, and this past year took an interesting turn for him. He felt like God was directing him to step out of full-time church ministry, buy a travel trailer and truck, and head out on the open road with his family. He recently returned from a year on the road as an RV full-timer, and I wanted him to share his thoughts about things he learned and some of his experiences. We also talked more in depth about the term ministry and how that can be more than just being on staff at a church. Here's my conversation with my friend, Aaron Malone. Aaron, thanks for being on Man 360.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me back.
How many times have I said that through 2 seasons?
I don't know.
It's been crazy.
Probably 6 times.
So I want to talk about a trip that you took with your family. That was actually more than a trip. It was actually a lifestyle change for a year. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, about a year, now it's been about 2 years. 2 years ago, my wife and I, this is kind of in the middle of COVID, we're talking and just discussing our lives. Like, what are we doing with our lives? Are we happy with where we're supposed to be? Do we feel like God is leading us in some other direction? And we felt that there was a change coming for a while. I've been in ministry for 12 years. I had my side business on YouTube. And one day we're sitting on the porch and I said, what would you think if we just like rented out the house, sold everything, and we got in an RV and just like traveled the country for a while? And she's like, that sounds awesome.
That's awesome.
And so we really started to unpack that for a couple months. Like, what would that look like? We were praying about it a bunch and, like, is this something we should do? Is this just like, a pipe dream? But we really had peace, and there was just a lot of confirmation from God throughout the couple months that we were making that decision. And so we decided to do that. And so I stepped out of ministry, for those people maybe who are considering, maybe you just have a job and you're like wanting to change jobs, or maybe you want to start your own business, something like that. You're like, can I walk away from, a salary?
Right.
We literally cut our income in half to do that. And just relied on YouTube, fully. And we rented out our house. We literally sold and got rid of everything outside of what we could fit in an 8 by 10 foot shed. Yeah. Bought a truck. Never had a truck before. Bought an RV. Never owned an RV before. It wasn't part of like our family growing up. Like my parents didn't have, an RV, so I knew what I was doing or anything. It was just like, we're gonna figure this out and we're gonna go. And we have a dog. We have 2 little boys, who are they were like 3 and 5 at the time when we decided to make that decision, and we did that. We hit the road. We became landlords? Yeah, like overnight. Yeah. I'm like, what does that mean? Never done that before. Right. Of our own property, like our main property, and then we traveled for 13 months full time. Went from like the Canadian border to the Mexican border. Went to California to Florida to Pennsylvania and everywhere in between, and drove through 26 states in 13 months and camped overnight or longer in 20 states. And so it was a real big, like, just kind of leap of faith, particularly, leaving all that like steady income, leaving family, leaving everything to just be like, let's just see what God does and, see what the country has and just take a big risk. And it's been amazing.
Well, I know you talked to me too about before you did this, and about kind of the timing that you were considering it. You were just talking about how you felt like as a dad, you weren't spending the kind of time that you wanted to with the boys.
Right.
You know, sometimes you talk about ministry and we're like, it's always about ministering to everybody else, but really, you know, our responsibility is to the family first.
Right.
So how do you feel like that really enhanced your relationship with the boys, with Ashley, living in 300 by 300 square feet for
300 square
13
feet
months
with 4 people
and no
a dog.
outside area. Yeah, with a dog as well. That's the other thing.
I mean, that, and that was definitely part of it, doing, you know, a full-time job and then a part-time job, probably on average working 60 hours a week. When I really like do the math on it, probably is what I was doing. You know, it became that I just wasn't spending a lot of time with my boys the way that I wanted to.
Right.
You know, and it was a lot of just kind of doing things. And I know a lot of people, that's what you got to do. And I get it.
Right.
But we felt like this was important to really reassess where we were as a family, reconnect as a family. And it absolutely has changed that. And it changed even my value system. Whereas I realized a lot of the time, if someone was asking me, like, you know, tell me about you, I would usually start with like my ministry. Then I would start with then I would talk about my YouTube business, and then my family would be last. And I was like, that is not okay.
Wow.
And I knew that was not okay. And so, and what I've discovered now, when I meet new people and they're talking to me about like my life, it's usually like my family, and then maybe like the stuff we just recently have done with RVing, and then like YouTube is like, this is who I am, right? Stuff. And so it has really, in a healthy way, rotated my value system, my what is most important to me, because I was realizing as I was talking, when I would meet people or they would ask me about myself, that I'm like, really, my family is like third on the list of importance, and that is not like what it's supposed to be.
On the flip side of that is, what were some challenges with being in that confined space with family? What were some of the things that was just learning boundaries? I mean, it wasn't like you could be, hey, I'm going to take the car and go whatever, truck go whatever. It's like, okay, now Ashley's stuck with all the kids, or Ashley's like, I'm going to take the truck and go. Or was there, how did you balance that with those challenges?
Yeah, there was definitely like juggling of just learning how to, I mean, I'm still running a business, so I'm running a business from an RV. Even up until and so to clarify, so we did that for about 13 and a half months. And then we felt like we had really seen the country, we'd gone all over the place, and we needed to reacclimate back to some form of stability, not only for my business to really go to the next level with my business, but our boys are getting to an age where they need to have school, and we're homeschooling them, but it was really tricky to try and do that in an RV with a business being run and just everything else. We're like, this is just so tricky. We can't do this full time. So we're going to probably just try to do that, you know, a couple months a year, every year, hopefully moving forward.
Yeah.
But even up until the day that we moved back into the house, we're like, this does feel like home. Like, we don't feel that cramped. We don't feel like, we're on top of each other, just get on. You know, like, we had really gotten a good system. God really blessed us with just a rig that fit our needs really well. And really the only times that would get hard is if I had to do like a lot of editing, or I had to make like a business call. It was like the only times that would be kind of tricky. But like, just our daily living was,
the dynamic,
we just really worked it well, and it was just a blessing in that way. And it was just more of learning how to maintain, you know, an RV, a recreational vehicle, which is not like living in a house. I mean, you are like working on something all the time. There's probably something breaking or needs to be replaced or repaired all the time, like literally almost daily. And so being okay with that and learning that process.
Well, you and I talked about a couple things about how you're trying to do the averages of if it was more expensive to stay in the house versus be in the trailer. And then you have your nights where you got to stay versus boondocking versus mooch, you know, all that kind of stuff. That was about the same, right?
Yeah, for the way that we did it. Now, I know lots of people, they basically try to, you know, they just dry camp like
try to as skinny as possible.
Dry camping is when you don't have any hookups and you're just like pulling up to like a dirt, you know, lot somewhere in the woods. And we did do that from time to time. But we found with us, again, living in it, and it's not just like we're going to do it for a week. It's like having full hookups with, you know, your sewer, your electric, your water was way easier, particularly with the kids. If it was just my wife and I, we probably could have dry camped a lot more and been okay. But just with the kids,
but the price wasn't that much better.
Correct.
You and I were like, man, you're going to save money. And you're like, no.
It was basically the same as our living in our house.
Right.
Yeah. So we didn't save a whole lot of money staying at campgrounds regularly with full hookups.
Right. So last thing. You mentioned something in your opening statement about I got out of ministry.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to think about how we were talking a little bit about how when we think of ministry, you only think of that as like a full-time church position, and not thinking of our lives as ministry. And there's really been a shift, and had to be for you because you got out of what you've always known as ministry.
Right.
So share a little bit about that, about how you're ministering through Gideon's Tactical, through other things as well.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's some pastors that would say they don't do this, but I don't know a pastor that doesn't get to a place on some level where they struggle with like, this is just my job. And so, and that's okay because you're called to do that. And so you move past that and you're like, okay, but this is what I'm called to do.
Right.
You know, and this is my income and this is what I do to like take care of my family. So this is what I'm going to do.
Right.
And so changing, and we can argue if that's healthy, if that's not. And I'm sure there'd be some pastors that are watching. It's like, I don't do that. I would disagree.
You sinner.
Let's go have a cup of coffee. I would disagree.
Throw a good face and walk out.
Right. No, but I would just disagree. There does come, and you have to work through that is what I'm saying.
Right.
And so a good pastor would work through that and continue to minister and love people and go, love of Christ is why I do this.
Right.
Not just, anyway.
Yeah.
So, but getting into a shift in a mindset of, okay, how do I still minister to people, but that's not my career. That's not my job to do. And it's a learning curve for sure. And I'm still, I haven't arrived. I'm not like, oh, I know how to do it now.
Right.
There's still things we were talking on the hike up here that I'm like, I don't know how to handle this particular situation or this particular relationship where as a pastor, I would do this and I would do this, but I'm not a pastor and I'm not a spiritual authority in your life like that anymore.
Well, I think too, it's almost like God is trying to perfect maybe another side of your character and who you are. Because you only really, you've been in church really as a church kid.
Like since I was 5.
Right. And then as a youth group, youth ministry together, doing some of those things.
I've been ministering in some way since I was 15.
Right. So it's like you really have to be able to kind of refigure those things out. But I just really appreciate too, just some of the relationships and stuff that you've built through Gideon's Tactical.
Mm-hmm.
I've been with you since the beginning, praying it in and just asking God to do that.
Yeah.
But but I just appreciate you being on the program and doing all of our outdoor segments together. And,
it's fun.
And today I loved just the conversation. So thanks, Aaron.
Cool, man. Appreciate it.
Let's do our 360-degree review of today's program. To me, Erskin is not just a musician, but someone who is working hard on many levels to change culture with a musical talent that doesn't just entertain, but inspires. His comments about submitting to Christ and God's purpose for his life is a wonderful reminder that doing things God's way is always the best way. I also enjoyed hearing his heart for foster care and adoption. When we put our lives fully in God's hands in every way, we position ourselves to enjoy where God places us and the door he opens up for us. For more information about Erskin, including some of the causes he mentioned, you can go to man360.tv/additional content. Yolanda and I had a great time tasting the 2 different brands of freeze-dried foods. As I mentioned, I always like to bring hot sauce or something more to help enhance their flavors. You can go to our Facebook or Instagram page right now and share your favorite hiking meal. Aaron Malone had an interesting life this past year, and maybe his comments challenged you to feel God calling you into something different. God may not be calling you to go to an RV and live full time, but maybe there's something other kind of shift he's prompting in you. I also hope our conversation about the word ministry helped put things in perspective for you. Being spiritually influential in people's lives is more than just being on staff at a church, but using your God-given gifts and talents anywhere you're placed. Man 360 exists for men to be complete in every way through Christ, mentally, physically, and spiritually. You can go right now to our website and send us a prayer request or tell us how we're doing, or connect with us on Facebook and Instagram, and we'll see you next week right here on Man 360. Okay, everybody stop making me laugh.